Fine. All right, so this quarter I read Gang Leader for a Day by Sudhir Venkatesh, um, and it's a recount. It's an account of his time as a sociology grad student at the University of Chicago. This was during the late '80s and early '90s, and also during this time, the crack trade was at a peak in the U.S. and especially in Chicago in the slums, and at that time also the largest projects or the largest project development in the country existed in Chicago. And so he was, uh, as a sociology student, he was studying conditions in the inner city and how um, black people felt about their situation and their living conditions and society. And so one day, at the start of the book, sort of he went out to give surveys in these homes, these projects. I think they were the Robert Shea Taylor homes, something along those lines. And so he, when he went up to one of the buildings to give them a survey, he came under suspicion because uh, the building was basically run by crack gangs who were in the process of dealing, and they and some of the gang members thought that he might be from a Mexican gang, and so they held him, they detained him, and forcibly against his will, and he basically ended up staying there overnight, and while he was like stuck in a stairwell of their home, he met a member of the gang who was kind of a minor leader who controlled a few of the homes in the area, and he actually got to know him, kind of got on his good side once they had figured out that he was just a college student instead of another gang member. And so he actually requested to come back and talk to these people and get a good picture of their life. So um, he ended up returning many times to these projects, and basically he became attached to this gang member who was moving up in the organization from a minor leader and guy who controlled one apartment block to, and he throughout the years that this book covers, um, which is a span of several years, the man he met that night moved farther up in the ranks, and so during his time with this guy, he spent a lot of he met all sorts of people in the homes. He saw, you know, a lot of police brutality. He became very well acquainted personally with all sorts of prostitutes, uh, squatters, handymen, and he basically focused on the economy. Um, he was it, during this time he was making personal relationships with all the people he came into contact with, but the main idea of his study was to kind of get a good picture of the uh, underground economy that goes on in these homes and like how people make their money, because very few of them have legitimate jobs outside of the homes. But he studied prostitution and all kinds of services and how things get done, and how single mothers who aren't getting any money survive, and how these people, and especially how the gang, because he had the gang perspective mainly, because those people, he was slightly biased towards them, and they were showing him around and kind of trying to give him a good perception of what they did besides sell crack, because um, they actually provided a lot of gang membership. Gang organizations back then were very well structured and provided a lot of functions besides dealing to residents, because they wanted the support of people. They wanted people to allow them to sell on their property, and they wanted people to be comfortable with them, and a lot of people depended on them because they would help protect women from violent boyfriends. They would help, they would help people buy things because most people in the homes who weren't part of gangs, needed a lot of extra money and extra assistance and labor and needed transportation places. And because of the welfare services and social service people and the police really didn't want to have any involvement with these homes, um, it's very interesting to see the part that the gangs played. And it was also amazing that this student gained so much access to their inner workings because he was just a foreigner. He was an Indian guy who had you know no credentials and no association, but they kind of took him in because he seemed harmless. And the guy who was uh, his friend, I think, wanted you know his friend who was a member of the gang was college educated and kind of had high aspirations, but then been forced back into the gang life. And I think he kind of wanted to wanted people to perceive him as a legitimate, a positive figure and a legitimate businessman. And so, in my opinion, this book is very interesting. It's fascinating. It's not only very factual and enlightening. It's exciting. All kinds of there's a lot of suspense there. This guy was witnessed drive-by shootings, had to drag a guy who had been shot in the leg out of a playground during a drive-by shooting, and he was on hand for a lot of violence and a lot of bad things. And he met many fascinating characters, like the woman who kind of who ran, who was a building manager and who was kind of the go-between between the housing services and the people who lived in the homes. And she had a very complex system of bribes and extortion and all kinds of crazy things going on. So I would definitely recommend this book. It's a unique perspective, and particular because it provides firsthand accounts that I don't think can be found anywhere else. I don't think any other people had this kind of close involvement and access during such an important time in the drug trade and the history of American gangs.